Welcome to TV Disrupt, our 5th annual conference. Thanks so much for coming. I'm Amelia, head of digital at Ispot, and your MC today. Looks like we've got quite a crowd from the brand, network, and agency side, and exciting 2 hours of content from so many great speakers. Before we kick off, you might be wondering, how can I engage with Ispot during TV Disrupt? Well, I'm glad you asked. Please add comments in the Zoom chat if you need any technical support. And if you have questions for our speakers, you can use the Q&A feature. Okay, now that we've gotten through housekeeping, let's get rolling. It's my great pleasure to introduce our founder and CEO, Sean Mueller, to the stage.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amelia, and welcome everyone to our 5th annual TV Disrupt event. I'm Sean Mueller, founder and CEO of Ispot, and I think most everyone is likely familiar with Ispot, but in case you're not, we work with hundreds of advertisers, helping them measure audience delivery, business outcomes, and brand impact in real time in a syndicated platform for TV and video investment. So without further ado, let's just jump into the event. So first of all, thank you, everybody. So happy you are able to join us today. I think you will really enjoy the content that we have put together. So our mission here at TV Disrupt is really to showcase how leading marketers are innovating in the face of major disruption that's happening in TV and media. And to that end, we've got an amazing lineup of speakers, which you can now see on the screen. And you will hear directly from senior marketers at a lot of leading and major brands and networks on how they are pushing their brands forward with innovations and their approaches to both creative and media. So you've probably seen the agenda. You can also see a link to it in the chat, but you can expect roughly more than an hour and a half here for some amazing content. And we're really going to focus on 5 key trends that are happening in TV and media that our speakers will cover. So with that, I'll just quickly cover the trends that we are going to be focusing on in TV Disrupt this year. So first and foremost, we're going to focus on the upfronts. So the upfront marketplace was seemingly appended during COVID, but appears to be unscathed. In fact, over 71% of major TV advertisers that we polled are planning to spend at least as much or more than previous normal levels in their upfront. And what we're learning is, while the dollar commitments are strong, flexibility in how advertisers want to deploy that commitment is really front and center. And in fact, 64% of advertisers expect more flexibility this year than ever before in their upfront. So today you will hear from Radha Subramaniam and Julian Zilberbrand from Viacom CBS and get a network's perspective on the upfront. The second trend that we're going to focus on today is, of course, streaming. So as everybody here knows, the world of TV is moving to streaming rapidly, and advertisers are really just learning how to navigate this new world now. And while 27% of TV viewing occurs on streaming platforms, only 5% of ad impressions are being delivered through streaming platforms. Now, that's of course because a lot of streaming services are not ad supported, such as Netflix and Amazon. But this is also in big part because advertisers really are just learning how to navigate this. So today you will hear from Tori Pakis and Whitney Pouliot from Amica on their data-driven approach to investing in streaming. So that was the second trend. The third trend that we are going to focus on today is accountability. So accountability and transparency in media has come front and center over this last year. So understanding how TV and video investments drive outcomes is critical. So to that end, today you will hear from Sarah Welch, the CMO of CarGurus, on how she has transformed CarGurus' approach to TV to one based on outcomes. And so you will see how TV delivers meaningful impact for CarGurus. And so you'll see how it delivers meaningful lift in leads, as well as savings on the cost per lead side on digital. So that's definitely another great session that you will not want to miss today. The fourth trend, and a really important one that we are tracking, is messaging and creative and empowerment. So creative messaging has come front and center during this time of turmoil, social unrest, and political tension. So creating messages that are empowering and culturally relevant are crucial for any brand success. In fact, during the pandemic, 80% of COVID-themed ads were seen as empowering. And in 2020, 24% of all ads were seen as empowering, which was a 92% increase year over year. So today you will hear from Peter Dayball, Chief Insight Officer at Ispot, about the latest trends in creative messaging. And finally, our fifth trend that you will hear about, and no doubt a really, really important one, is this notion of balancing brand impact with business outcomes together. And that is, of course, becoming of critical importance to brands. So today you will hear from T-Mobile's Peter DeLuca on how T-Mobile has done this over the past year through not only the pandemic, but also pulling off one of the largest corporate mergers through the pandemic in the merger between T-Mobile and Sprint. So in fact, without further ado, let's just jump right into our first session. And I am super excited to welcome our first guest to this year's TV Disrupt. So we will kick off the event with a fireside chat with Peter DeLuca, Chief Creative Officer at T-Mobile. Welcome, Peter. How are you? And where are you joining us from today?
Hey, Sean, I am great. I'm coming to you live from Colorado today. With the pandemic and work from anywhere, I've had the opportunity to spend a little bit more time out here, but look forward to heading back to Seattle real soon.
We look forward to seeing you here. All right. Well, let's jump in. So Peter, you've been at T-Mobile for about 11 years now, and obviously been a driving force behind the Un-carrier movement. Why don't it'd be great if you can tell the audience today kind of a little bit more about your background, kind of what you focused on at T-Mobile over the last 11 years, and maybe most importantly, what you oversee there today. For
sure. So you're right. I've been at T-Mobile. It's hard to believe 11 years, but it's really, I feel like I've worked at multiple companies because the brand and the company has changed so much over those past 11 years. I came to T-Mobile because I saw this amazing opportunity to rebuild a great brand in America. And this was 11 years ago. And I will tell you the story. When I joined the company, T-Mobile was losing roughly, 500,000 customers every quarter, or 2 million customers every year, which is not really a sustainable proposition. But we then put what we call the Un-carrier campaign together about 8 years ago, and we shifted the trajectory of the brand and the business. And really, the fundamental premise under the Un-carrier is we love our customers, and it's doing what's right for our customers every single day. And we've stayed committed to that over the past 8 years, like I said, which has just been an amazing journey. Now, I oversee at T-Mobile. I have this great opportunity. I oversee all the creative that we produce across T-Mobile, T-Mobile for Business, and Metro by T-Mobile. So all of the brands that we put into the marketplace. But I also oversee the entire media operations that we do, both from a traditional sense and from a programmatic sense that we build. And very exciting, we've built, through our merger with Sprint, we now have what we call T Studios, which is a fully operating in-house creative resource where we're able to develop content and web creative every single day. So it's a real strong remit, but as I like to say, every consumer touch point that we do with creative, I have oversight of for the brand.
Awesome. So you've been at T-Mobile for 11 years, but let's talk more about the last year or so at T-Mobile, because wow, the Un-carrier has really gone into hyperdrive here over the last year, right? You guys, you guys have had a lot of very significant events that have occurred here over the last year, starting with 5G, and of course the Sprint merger, and doing all this during the pandemic. Can you take us through just some of these major milestones over the last year or so?
Well, I like to say so many brands, it's been complicated for all brands to navigate the pandemic. But I think we might be the only brand that had to do it, as well as merge two large companies and put them together. But really, I think as you started to talk about, 5G has been the foundation of what our core messaging has been for the brand and the business. And we really started that, call it late 2019. And we had made a decision as a business and a brand that we weren't going to start really talking aggressively about 5G until we could cover the entire country. And we were able to do that. We were first to claim nationwide 5G in December of 2019. But really that was the foundation. And we took on this core philosophy that, we knew that our impending Sprint merger, we were hoping was going to ultimately be approved. But we really sort of discussed as a brand, bringing two companies together, our fundamental belief and in our uncarrier spirit was we needed to use our scale for good. And we called it 5G for good. And we sort of laid out our foundation, and we put some core ideas and really new ideas into the marketplace. And some of them were Project 10 Million, which was bringing Wi-Fi to school-age children who didn't have in-home capabilities, Connecting Heroes, which was really giving free service to those who serve all of us across the country, and then just our expansion of 5G and really the rollout of what we did with 5G. We did all of this, including merging with Sprint, and really the merger with Sprint came on April Fool's Day in 2020. Just over a year ago. So it's been a very exciting journey to finally culminate with that. And really, that is where we started to pivot our messaging around our network, because now we no longer were just the T-Mobile network, we were the T-Mobile plus the Sprint network. And for a consumer, one of the ways that you can really start to enhance your messaging is talk about buying another network, and you're doubling the size of your network, which really started to add even more credibility to us as a brand and to our network. And then coupled with the last piece of the puzzle, which was on August, which is when we really went down the path of aggressively flipping out and changing out thousands of Sprint locations and turning them into T-Mobile stores across the country. And in that, we actually used our TV to help tell that narrative, because literally, if you'd gone to a Sprint store, call it on Tuesday one week, and you went back on Saturday, the store was no longer Sprint, it was T-Mobile. So we're trying to use our broadcast as just an educational way where we literally flipped stores from Sprint to T-Mobile just to try to help to tell the narrative.
So how would you describe the pandemic as impacting all of this that's going on? How are you guys able to do all of this during the pandemic?
Many of the things, it was hard. Let's just be honest. Everything from trying to produce creative when you're not able to even physically do production a lot of times, to really, we built products. I talked about Project 10 Million and Connecting Heroes. The launch of those was technically supposed to be later in 2020, but because of the pandemic, we felt it was so important that we pulled them up earlier and really get them into the marketplace to start having impact on consumers. Because really, especially like Project 10 Million, it is something that helped greatly during the pandemic, especially when kids were no longer able to go into classrooms.
And were you guys always planning on merging Sprint so quickly, right? Because it seems like you guys did it, within 6 months, like the brand literally disappeared overnight and became Sprint stores, became T-Mobile stores. So was that always planned, or did you guys decide to accelerate that?
I would be honest. The plan was a longer timeline. It was probably closer to a year. Was originally thought of what we were going to do. but the pandemic sort of forced us to accelerate some of that because we really had to start thinking differently about how we were operating our businesses, especially from an employee basis. We're a retailer, if you think about it. I think we have 7,000 just T-Mobile stores, and we have another 7,000 Metro by T-Mobile stores. So, we're a large national retail. And if you were thinking about the pandemic, things were shutting down. We had to take care of our employees and what we were going to do, and how do you pivot from selling in store to selling on a more via online or digital platforms. So we were aggressively trying to maneuver all of that, but we really felt like it would help the consumer if we just consolidated the brands much quicker. And that was when the decision was made.
Yeah, really, really impressive how quickly that was done. Peter, let's dive in more into Project 10 Million, right? Because it seems like there was a lot of philanthropy behind the Uncarrier campaign, but Project 10 Million in particular seemed to have a lot of focus, a lot of traction behind it. So can you tell us a little bit more kind of when that was born and how you guys unfolded that, and how did it even relate, if at all, with the Sprint merger?
For sure. Well, I mean, we started this, I talked a little bit earlier just about 5G for good, and it was one of our initial initiatives, and it was developed initially as something that was going to help cover the homework gap. And if you think about it, prior to the pandemic, there was 50 million children that were remote that didn't have access to home internet. So we thought, what can we do? So we developed this program, Project 10 Million. Well, as the pandemic hit, number one, we pulled it up and got it launched earlier, but we also ensured that the program, we expanded how much capacity on each of the devices that we offered allowed for full schooling in home, which is very different than just trying to do your homework at night. So the whole goal when we did this, and it was pretty interesting, it felt like we were at this sweet spot. We were not only meeting the needs of what was going on through consumers, but it was also the pandemic just heightened the awareness of this gap that was out there and the chasm, because not only couldn't you do your homework, you couldn't even go to school anymore. So we were stepped in and tried to help solve that problem. And I'll be honest, we developed creative, and I mean, we're in the industry of, that's my job. We create creative and put it on TV. And this spot actually really touched America in a very strong way. I mean, you see some of the numbers, but it was one of the #1 spots for the wireless category over the past year. And part of why I think that was so much is we were able to just hit the consumer with a message that was relevant, very timely, just given everything going on in the world at that time. But we also provided a solution. We came in as a brand and offered a solution that could be immediately impact those most in need. So I think that's some of the reasons why we saw it have such great traction in the marketplace.
Yeah, and obviously this was a runaway success and a win-win because this campaign clearly had a lot of impact on the population, right, in a lot of areas that really needed this help, and also was of course great for T-Mobile as well. And as we can see here, I mean, this campaign compared to what looks like 350 wireless campaigns, this ranked #1 in terms of attention and likability and the way it conveyed information, and also scored really, really high on relevance and empowerment. So really, congratulations on a campaign well done. Was this creative actually produced ahead of the pandemic, or was it during the pandemic, or?
I would say this would be one of our first productions that we had to navigate the world of the pandemic in order to get it produced, where we had to source a lot of footage from lots of different places because we weren't able to shoot it exactly the way that we were trying to get it done. So it was one of those where working with our partners who were based in Los Angeles, who actually did the creative. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of Zoom calls, which is how we were trying to stay connected as we were trying to get it all developed. And we did it fairly quickly, I would say probably within 2 weeks. And to say that you're able to develop work within a couple of weeks, plus make it one of the best spots. And, when you talk about the 350 spots, I have a lot of spots in that 352. So for this to be at the top of the heap, I'm pretty proud that I was able to deliver that, because number one, it makes you feel really good as a brand that the message resonates clearly. The spot is a really, really great spot, but it's also that we were doing something good. And I think it's kind of balancing both those things.
Yeah, totally. And so just kind of going back to just kind of high level, when you think about launching a new creative or a new campaign, what are some of your top priorities? What are some of your top KPIs that you're really focused on?
Well, as you step through how we develop work, first and foremost, we go back and look at like all the other spots that we have on the air, and we see what's worked and what hasn't worked, and is it similar? Because we do work both at the brand level, which I'd call like Project 10 Million, but also work at the demand gen level, offering rate plans or phone offers, and those are two very different types of things. They'll have two very different types of KPIs. Things at the brand level, we're really looking, does it impact our network, and are we seeing movement that our network is reliable, or our network core capabilities there? On demand gen, it's very different. Is the offer clear? Like that, first and foremost, we test everything and we learn. Is the offer clear, and is the offer resonating? Because you also, when you think about it, offers, we're in the wireless category is a pretty offer-driven category. So you have to break through with your message, because there's rate plans and there's devices, and at some point consumers kind of tune you out. So you have to constantly make sure that you are getting their attention when you're putting offers and creative into the marketplace. But from our KPIs, we have core business metrics that we look at every single day. Are we driving door swings, and are we driving retail sales, meaning number of accounts that you're acquiring over the course of a day or a week or a month or a year.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so when you guys are thinking about this kind of balance between hitting some of the brand KPIs and some of these more lower funnel business outcome KPIs, how do you think about the relationship kind of between those two things?
It would be easy to say it's about a 50-50 mix, but sometimes we fine tune along the way, because really, as you think about it from a branding perspective, opening up the upper part of the funnel, and really that's we think of that at the more brand level, the more network level, telling consumers about your network. And I'll be honest, T-Mobile has come from, we were number 4 when I started the company, and now we're number 2 in terms of wireless customers, and we still see massive growth potential in the marketplace. But you have to open up the funnel. So we have a lot of network perception gains that are needed. And being the leader in 5G and being the brand that has the most spectrum to deploy continually to rapidly build out our 5G, we believe, we have to establish ourselves as the leader. So we're no longer the underdog, and we've changed our tone of voice and how we position ourselves and how we go to market with it. We believe the more that we start to solidify that type of messaging, also coupled with doing good types of messaging like Project 10 Million and Connecting Heroes and other efforts that we do as a brand, you couple that at the top of the funnel, and then you go in with smart offers that will drive the business. And when I say that, it could be an offer. We introduced Magenta Max, which is a fully a plan that never slows you down in the marketplace, and it's been a very successful consumer offering in the marketplace. But the same thing on like a Metro PCS. I mean, they're running on the T-Mobile network, and we paired those two messages together in their TV. So it's no longer, it's Metro, but then running on the T-Mobile network.
Makes sense. All right, Peter, this has been really, really insightful and awesome. One last question as we wrap up. Obviously, you guys have accomplished so much in the last year or so. So what's next for the Un-carrier movement?
Well, we are just starting the 5G era, and I think that's so important for people, because 5G, you think about it, it's just wireless, but 5G is this explosive, exponential growth. And it's going to going to explode into the marketplace, just like 4G did with the onslaught of apps and things like that. What you're going to see is advancements in everything from home internet. We just launched at T-Mobile home internet that we've put into the marketplace within the last month. But you're also going to see expansion into IoT, connected devices, everything from things for health or things for travel or honestly, autonomous cars. That's something coming in the future too, believe it or not, that 5G is going to empower and make that even more possible. So really it's taking this network asset that we have and allowing developers to really use it and expand upon all the possibilities of what 5G can deliver.
Makes sense. All right, Peter. Well, listen, huge thank you for joining us here at TV Disrupt. I think our audience has really appreciated your insights here. Congrats on all the success, and once again, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, take care.
Take care, man.
All right, that was great. Well, I'm super excited to introduce our next session. And our next session is going to be a case study on how Amica is approaching their investment in streaming video asset. So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce Tori Packus, VP of Marketing at Amica, and Whitney Pouliot, Assistant Marketing Manager at Amica. All right, Tori, take it away.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you having us here to join the Ispot TV Disrupt Summit this year. As you mentioned, my name is Tori Packus. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at Amica Insurance, and I'm joined by my colleague, Whitney Pouliot, who is the Assistant Marketing Manager on our team. And we're really excited to share with you some of the Amica story and how we've leveraged Ispot's unified TV ad measurement platform to optimize our media plan and meet our marketing objectives. Before we jump into that, I thought it would be helpful to share a little bit about who Amica is. And Amica stands for Automobile Mutual Insurance Company of America. I like to joke that we love a good acronym in the insurance industry. And we're actually the oldest mutual insurer of automobiles in the US. We were founded in Providence, Rhode Island in 1907. Today, our corporate headquarters is in Lincoln, Rhode Island. But we are a direct writer that has offices across the country, and we write business nationally. One aspect of our value proposition and something that we're really known for from a brand standpoint is our high level of customer service and claims handling. We were actually the first insurance company to receive 50 J.D. Power Awards for customer service, going back to the year 2000. And up until about 20 years ago, the only way you could get an Amica policy was through a referral from a friend or family member. It was very much a word of mouth acquisition strategy. But because of that, we have a really high sort of brand loyalty with our customers and a strong sense of community with our policyholders. So they're important brand ambassadors for us. It wasn't until the 1990s that we decided to expand into paid media and tell our brand story to a larger audience. So today we use a full complement of omni-channel acquisition strategies, including direct mail, television, email, digital marketing, and most recently OTT and connected TV. Our industry, what's really interesting about our industry, it's a very competitive, crowded category. In fact, last year, the insurance category spent over $9 billion in advertising, which represents an 18% increase over 2019. And a lot of that was led by the companies you see here, Progressive, Allstate, State Farm, and Geico. And because of our size and scale, I like to consider us more of a niche brand in this crowded category. We're not trying to be everything to all people. Our target is really a market that will pay a premium for that elevated level of service that I referenced. But it also means that we've got essentially a 1% share of voice in this crowded category. And it means we have to be more efficient and agile with our marketing budgets. We have to make our impressions work harder for us than maybe some of our competitors that have larger scale budgets. And it's really critical to optimize those media plans. And that's where Ispot's unified TV measurement platform has really been helpful for us to maximize every impression in OTT and linear. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the impact of the pandemic on the insurance category and Amica. Like many industries, it presented challenges, but also opportunities. One of the interesting facts about last year was our industry saw a 55% decline in miles driven. And when you combine that with the 15% unemployment rate that we saw countrywide, it means there were fewer cars on the road and fewer accidents that were happening. And as a result of that, many companies in our category returned a total of $18 billion in premium to policyholders. In addition to the driving and the premiums returned, there were several macroeconomic trends that also impacted Amica and our industry. Typically, auto and home sales are triggers for insurance shopping, and there was tremendous volatility in both. When you look at things like on the home side, record low interest rates or major drive of folks moving out of urban areas into suburban areas, it had an impact on the typical triggers for insurance shopping. Many industries also experienced, a move towards digital transformation, and we saw a lot of the same at Amica. A lot of our bread and butter and where we're able to demonstrate our value proposition is when our service representatives can speak with policyholders and prospects over the phone. And in addition to what we're able to do over the phone, we saw a move and a shift towards digital as well. Also, like many companies, we kept an eye on the accelerated pace of cord cutting and the lack of live sports, especially early in the pandemic. And this situation, forced many of us to find new ways to deliver our message to our target audience. For us, in a way, we were lucky as we'd already laid the foundation for OTT through our partnership with Ispot. So we were well positioned for some of these trends as they took place. So now I'll turn it over to Whitney to talk a little bit about more about what we learned from the unified measurement platform.
Thanks, Tori. So I think we really went into OTT at the get-go thinking that these campaigns were going to be big brand awareness drivers. We really didn't expect them to drive those lower funnel conversion metrics. So initially we were looking at KPIs like video complete rates, incremental reach, and we even fielded some brand lift studies. And supporting as a secondary metric through Ispot, we did track conversions or visits to amica.com. And really through unified measurement, we gleaned some super valuable insights, some that validated what we thought originally was going to happen and other things that came a little bit more of a surprise to us. First, we tested a variety of different platforms, but one really rose to the top in terms of metrics like conversion rates, incremental reach, and video complete rates. We also gained some really valuable insights when we looked at the two different channels separately and in tandem. So between OTT and linear, we really were able to prove out some unique value of each within our media mix. So in terms of some linear TV wins, we saw that we really were able to gain broader reach based on how we currently buy with linear TV. It's a broader reach medium, but we did see that we were able to get some great incremental gains within OTT in terms of unduplicated reach. I think there's still a premium that comes with buying OTT as it's currently offered today. So we definitely saw more efficiencies and gained efficiencies in terms of CPM and cost per conversion when we look at linear TV. So really proving out the role of both of these channels within our buying strategy. But I would say that OTT is getting closer to linear and vice versa. So this is something that we're monitoring closely and negotiating with networks a little bit differently than we have in the past. When we look at OTT wins on the left-hand side here, people I think are really more engaged in this environment. We saw this specifically within our ads through stronger completion rates and people just staying in tuned in longer to these spots. I think the value proposition here is just really more relevant to a more targeted audience. OTT is also proven to have a stronger conversion rate based on what we saw versus linear TV. Again, likely due to that more one-to-one targeting that we see within the channel. And when we drill down to specific unit lengths, we see that 15s actually convert better than 30-second spots within OTT. And that's actually the opposite of what we've seen in linear. Maybe not super surprising, just given, I think, the environment, the user experience is a lot different in OTT. There's limited ad loads. People's attention spans perhaps are a little bit less, and they have more of a desire just to get to that content a little bit quicker. But both 15s and 30s have an important role within our media buys. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot more advanced targeting options for OTT. So I think that just helps make our buys more effective. We're able to target on a one-to-one household basis and eliminate some of the wasted impressions that we may see in some other channels. So the results that we show here are really specific to this point in time when we tested, and it's something that we're monitoring closely through the unified measurement platform with Ispot, and they're going to vary for us over the course of time and obviously across different campaigns and different advertisers. But some really great takeaways, I think, from the learnings that we've gained that we've really brought forward into our strategy moving forward. First and foremost, I think OTT has really proven to be a viable channel for us, and we're working to make it a continuous part of our media plans moving forward in tandem with linear TV. Secondly, we saw that the results were really distinctly different from linear. So we know we can be more effective if we're able to tailor make unique creative for this channel, incorporating a lot of those best practices. So things like quicker cuts within the visuals and the voiceovers, more people focused and more prominent and persistent branding. Next, like Tori mentioned earlier, our budgets are a fraction of what our competitors spend. So we really have to be smarter with every dollar that we're spending. So to have insight into performance metrics and seeing what publishers and DSPs are the top performing for us is really pivotal. But at the same time, we don't want to be siloed, within the same partners all the time. Where it's possible, we have to maintain that test and learn mentality and make sure that we're really testing into new publishers and DSPs. The marketplace is evolving on a daily basis. There's more apps, there's new offerings, so it's really important to stay on top of that as well. Next, what we're trying to do is leverage more first-party data. We know that the third-party cookie is really becoming a thing of the past. And really what this helps us do is just ensure that our dollars are being spent better on those prospects that are more likely to convert for us. And last but not least, negotiate with flexibility in mind with all our buys. Our priorities shift throughout the year. The marketplace is constantly evolving, like I mentioned. So it's important to negotiate with flexibility in mind so we can shift and optimize as needed. And all of these initiatives are really supported by that Ispot unified measurement platform. And it's something that we're going to continue to incorporate moving forward. A few key takeaways that we wanted advertisers and agencies to leave here today with. The first tip being, like I mentioned before, bring a test and learn mentality. Basically throw anything that you thought might happen out the window. Really keep an open mind. So no matter what we say today, no matter how many webinars you might attend, trades you might read, you're really not going to know how this performs for you until you test it for yourself. Second, acknowledge that OTT is a completely different animal than linear. As you saw from our results, we saw very different performance metrics within each channel. The audience of OTT is really largely unduplicated, and the media and the user expectations are different. So you can repurpose the same creative across channels, but you're probably not going to see the same performance metrics of each because the environments are completely different. So where it's possible, we'd recommend incorporating any channel-specific best practices and personalizing that creative. So really taking advantage of that one-to-one targeting at your fingertips with OTT. And as you saw earlier, the measurement results are likely to be different. So implementing something like unified measurement with Ispot is really helpful to create a single view of performance.
Thanks, Whitney. And I think a good third and final tip, and maybe a little bit of stating the obvious here, but for those of you that work with outside agency partners, making sure that you set clear objectives and have open communication around the expectations from both a media planning and creative standpoint as it relates to OTT. As Whitney mentioned, this is a little bit of the new frontier. So I think, being able to establish those objectives up front and keeping open lines of communication can help you be agile in your plans. So we hope this the Amica experience here was valuable, and again, thank you for having us join the Ispot TV Disrupt Summit this year. And at this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Wow, thanks so much, Whitney and Tori. I'm excited to dive into learning about what's next for Amica. But before we do, let's take a deeper look at audience targeting. Whitney, the first question's for you. What advanced audience targeting options have you seen most success with in OTT?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Really, there's thousands of data points available within OTT, and we see the targeting a lot more comparable to digital versus linear. So not only do we have access to things like behavioral and demographic segments, but there's a lot more at our fingertips in terms of addressable segments based on things like actual subscription and user data. So one example is competitive conquesting, and that can really be leveraged to get in front of someone who's already seen one of your key competitors' ads. Or on the flip side, you can use it to do the opposite and find the competitive white space. Another opportunity that we see is cord cutters or heavy streamers. So if you're maxed out in TV, for example, and you really want to reach an unduplicated incremental audience, that type of segment provides some great incremental reach. And one other example I would say is leveraging more first-party data, like I've mentioned a lot today. We use it specifically for modeling purposes right now. Of course, in a privacy-safe way, we really try to measure and duplicate our best customers to help us, leverage the money that we're spending in OTT even better. And ultimately, all of these examples, I think, really allow us and other advertisers to deliver a more targeted message to higher propensity prospects on that one-to-one basis.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney, for those details. As a follow-up, can you talk more about any advanced targeting such as audience-based buying, optimizations, etc., those types of tactics that you're doing or are looking into on the linear side, and any advice for how to align with that targeting on the OTT side?
Yeah, so at Amica, we really try to streamline all of our targeting parameters across the board, regardless of channel, whether it be OTT, direct mail, addressable, or linear TV. So we have tools that help us back into that across the board. And specifically for linear, we're able to find that high reaching and high propensity target based on specific targeting parameters. And what the beauty of OTT and the addressable media is that we can really target them on that one-to-one basis. So I think as we're looking to the present and we're looking even further into the future, like I mentioned before, we're trying to find more ways to leverage that first party data, creating modeled audiences off of our best customers, and even beyond that, trying to find a more holistic multi-touch attribution solution, knowing that each channel really plays off of each other in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's excellent. Tori, going off Whitney's point, do you have anything to add or any advice for how to align with targeting on the OTT side or on the linear side?
I think Whitney covered it really well. I guess at a high level, I would say that, the landscape is evolving very quickly in OTT and streaming. And, as these measurements improve and evolve in streaming, I think attribution will also improve and will become more predictable in a lot of ways in some other channels that advertisers are using. So it's just one of those things that we're going to continue to test and evaluate in the months to come.
No, that's excellent. Thanks for the details when it comes to targeting. I'm seeing a good amount of our audience ask about creative and length as it pops up. So this one's for you, Tori. Why do you think 15-second ads are more effective on streaming?
Yeah, as Whitney mentioned earlier, 15-second ads converted better for us. And I have a few hypotheses as to why, but I guess my advice to other brands would be to really test and learn and see what's right for you. I don't know that it's a one size fits all for everybody. It'll depend on your brand, your target, the objectives of your campaign, and ultimately the message that you're looking to deliver. But I think one hypothesis I have as to why 15 seconds performed better for us is just the attention spans of people and how those are evolving. in a streaming environment, they may want to get to content a lot faster, very similar to an experience consumers would expect in like a YouTube or another social media channel. Whitney, the other day you were telling me a funny story. I hate to put you on the spot, but maybe you could share it with a group.
Yeah, sure. So I know personally my attention span is a lot shorter than it used to be. And I have a toddler, so I think we see shorter attention spans in general with him. But when it comes to our TV consumption habits, our household, we're basically cord cutters. We don't watch a lot of traditional TV. And whenever my 2-year-old sees a commercial within any sort of video environment, it's taken aback and surprised that his whole experience is interrupted, and he says, "Uh-oh," or "Oh no." So I think not all of us have the attention spans of a 2-year-old, but I'd say they're definitely gotten a lot shorter than they used to be in the past. So the user expectation and the experience is just totally different.
Right. No, that's a great comparison. And looks like we have time for one more question. Going off your point earlier in the presentation, since you're competing against other huge spenders in your category, I'm curious if you're buying media where they are advertising heavily, or are you investing more in white space opportunities? And since this is the last one, I'm going to open it up. Who would like to take this one?
I can jump in, and Tori, jump in if you have anything else to add too. But I think a lot of our competitors, really just due to the size of their budgets in comparison to ours, really have the TV space in particular covered. So naturally, there's going to be some overlap between where they're spending and where we're spending. But like Tori mentioned earlier, we're a really unique brand. We're a really unique advertiser. So our target is different than the likes of Geico. So people are more willing to pay a higher price for a more valuable product. So we do look at areas where our specific target audience is most likely to be watching. And we're able to leverage the data that we have access to in Ispot to really help us determine where that white space opportunity is, and look at where viewers are engaging the most through metrics like attention indices and conversion rates.
Yeah, I think you nailed it again, Whitney. I mean, I would just add, at the end of the day, our objective is to deliver the right message to the right target. And, there's going to be overlap given how saturated our industry is. And, we still have opportunity to grow in linear as well. So we're not nearly as saturated in that medium either. So, we're in hockey playoffs. So I'd say we're gonna skate to where the puck is and try to do that in the most efficient way. And really optimize our media plan, whether that's where our competitors advertise or not.
Well, Whitney and Tori, thank you so much for your time and for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Of course. Going to close this out and taking it back to our CEO and founder, Sean.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Amelia. And a huge thank you to Tori and Whitney. And that was an amazing presentation. And I love the disciplined approach to deploying streaming investments. And it's just a great template for others to potentially follow here. So thank you for that. All right, without further ado, let's move on to our next session. I am very excited to introduce Sarah Welch, the Chief Marketing Officer for CarGurus, for a really insightful look at how CarGurus has connected their TV investment to first-party data and is really taking their data-driven approach to the next level. So without further ado, Sarah, thank you for being here, and please take it away.
Thanks, Sean, for having me. As Sean mentioned, I'm Sarah Welch. I'm the CMO of CarGurus, and I'm going to walk you through a case study about proving the cross-channel impact of TV here at CarGurus. For those of you who aren't familiar with CarGurus, we are the leading car shopping site in America. We're based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we basically are a listing site that allows consumers to search all inventory available across the country to zero down and find the car that is right for them. We do a lot of technology work and leverage algorithms to help them find for any used car based on all of its attributes, which ones are the best deals that are available for them, and then to make it really easy for them to contact a reputable dealer in order to express interest in that vehicle. We're moving in some other directions as well that we're really excited about in terms of bringing more of the transactional experience online, and also in helping consumers sell their car online as well. That's an area that we're investing in as well. But one of the dynamics for us that was really relevant when we launched television and made it particularly challenging for us to measure performance is that we were actually the most visited automotive site in America before we launched television. So incrementality was something that was challenging for us to measure on an overall traffic perspective, and we really needed to get smart about attribution. So the evolution of our attribution efforts has really unfolded in 3 phases over several years. When we first launched television, we were relying on a site survey that went to a sample of consumers that just simply asked them, what most influenced you to visit CarGurus today? And we tracked that to a percentage of sessions, and from that we extrapolated and just estimated a percentage of lead submissions on our site that would have been associated with that. So not terribly sophisticated. We also, with our TV agency, we're doing a fairly simple regression analysis to look at baseline traffic and what we thought was incremental from our TV spend. But again, that was relying primarily on spike analysis and kind of real-time response versus being able to help us understand the full impact of TV. The second evolution of our approach to attribution involved making that survey a little bit more sophisticated and actually tracking multiple sessions of downstream behavior to truly track someone who said TV drove them to our site to whether they ultimately submitted a lead. But still, in that situation, it was self-reported in terms of television being the influence for them, and not multi-touch in terms of understanding the interaction between television and other channels. So we weren't terribly satisfied with that. Around that same time period, we actually hired internally a PhD statistician who worked with us and created a regression model for us. But it was a fairly brute regression, causal impact regression model for us because we just didn't have enough data points to really get sophisticated. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but it didn't give us the granularity and the real-time results that we were hoping for. And so that is the time period when we first started working with Ispot and really improving upon our attribution capabilities. We moved then leveraging Ispot into what is a causal lift model. And it really helps us to bring from television real clickstream behavior and understanding exposure to TV and downstream behavior to let us really have a much richer view of attribution and the influence of TV on our overall results and on other channels of marketing. So the first regression approach that we took prior to really being able to work closely with Ispot, as I said, was a bit bruised. We built a counterfactual model that let us predict what we would expect the lead volume to be from our site in the absence of television. And we looked at that over a multi-year period. And interestingly, that more or less confirmed the results that we were getting from our surveys. But still, it didn't let us isolate or give credit to impacts other than TV that were changing. We were looking at the measurable leads that we expected from all of our click-based efforts, but if we were making conversion rate improvements to the site, or if SEO was getting better or worse, we weren't really able to measure that, and we were probably over-crediting TV in that model. It also became less accurate at estimating the baseline the longer that we were on TV. So with Ispot coming on board and bringing us better data, it really was transformative for our measurement and attribution. The final thing is it just didn't let us do real time. I think in this model, the most granular that we could get in terms of understanding what we thought the cost per lead from television was a quarterly result. And that was just much less granular than the daily or even hourly results that we could see through digital channels and that we wanted to emulate for TV. So with Ispot data, and I should say we have got the core package, but we also have partnered with Ispot to ingest user level data into our system to do attribution. And not only do we have our own exposed audience to understand every TV impression that Ispot users have for CarGurus, but we've also purchased a control. And in our case, it's Geico, because they're one of the biggest advertisers in the country. And that lets us isolate and look at the behavior of audience that was exposed to our television ads and audience that was not, and look at their different downstream behavior. With the Ispot data and our own, marrying those two together, we were able to model thousands of different patterns of behavior. And we obviously needed machine learning to do this. We looked at all of the different click streams downstream of television and the different patterns of engagement with our digital marketing, and found similar patterns, aggregated up similar patterns of behavior from people who are exposed to television and not exposed to television in order to help us understand from a case and control perspective, what was the impact of seeing our TV ads onto our digital marketing efficiency. So using that data, there were really three key questions that we were trying to look at. How does television-driven traffic differ from other channels? How is the audience different that we're driving using TV? Where and what channels does TV influence traffic come from? So TV, you don't have a click. And we really wanted to understand which channels were most influenced by television. And for a smaller company, for an earlier stage company, you may be able to see it with the bare eye that particular channels are spiking, but with the baseline of traffic that we had, we really needed to be very data-driven in understanding those influences and making sure we were giving TV the appropriate credit for the growth in traffic that we were seeing on our site. And then finally, we really wanted to understand, how does TV exposure impact our other digital marketing channels, and was it making it materially more efficient? So that first question, how does TV-driven traffic differ from other sources? We were able to dig into data and understand, and some of these are fairly intuitive, but it was still interesting to us to understand that TV was driving a newer audience for us. The mix of first-time visitors was much higher for TV than for our non-TV audience. Not entirely surprising, since TV is an awareness building channel and an upper funnel channel, but still a really interesting confirmation of learnings for us and attractive for us, because we had a very rich retargeting program and search program in place prior to launching TV. And so one of our goals in television was to pull new audience into the site. And we were able to confirm that, yes, indeed, that was happening as a result of television. And then we additionally determined, and because it's a newer audience, not entirely surprising, that the TV audience was slightly less engaged than some of the audience that was coming in through our intent-driven channels. But that was not surprising and just meant that we needed to nurture that audience a little bit more. In terms of the channels that TV influenced traffic came in through, we really wanted to understand this, since again, there's no clickstream there. And we used spike analysis, primarily looking around really significant TV buys. And in particular, we aggregated the post exposure behavior from a number of significant NFL spots that we ran to understand the spikes in different traffic channels, to determine what channels are most influenced by TV. And for us, direct traffic and our app were significantly influenced. But interestingly, also search was a channel that saw significantly higher engagement following TV exposure. The big question that we were really trying to answer, and where we're most excited about how Ispot has been able to help us develop our learnings, is really, how does TV exposure ultimately impact the effectiveness of the rest of your marketing mix? And looking at those behaviors of exposed audience versus non-exposed audience for TV, for us was just a goldmine of insights, and just some of the key learnings that we had. After exposure to television, our audience was 2 times as likely to click on a CPC or organic link that was presented in front of them, which was a huge finding for us. And from an economic perspective, in terms of how productive our other channels were, where someone was exposed to TV prior to other downstream behaviors, we saw a 35% savings in our CPC click costs. And that is because the TV audience was more likely to engage in branded search as opposed to generic category search. And the fact that they were typing in CarGurus meant that the competition for those terms was significantly lower, and our cost per click came down by that 34%. And also we saw that our cost per lead actually came down in terms of the cost in our digital marketing channels that we had to spend in order to close a lead, also came down by 35% for audience that was exposed to TV. And that was because the TV exposed audience required fewer paid clicks subsequent to that TV exposure before they submitted a lead to CarGurus than an audience that hadn't seen TV. So these were really profound insights for us that really helped us understand the performance of television, understand the cost per lead that we were generating from television, and also really inform what was the right media mix for us. Now, for your brand, and depending on your media mix, you wouldn't necessarily see these exact results, but I think directionally, the insights around how television is impacting other channels and how quantitative you can be in isolating that, leveraging Ispot data is a really exciting finding that we continue to dig into. So in terms of looking ahead for our program, we started really at the macro level of what is the impact of TV overall? How is it performing? How is it interacting with our other channels? But now we're really drilling down for deeper analyses and really looking at the specific channels and networks and programming that we're using, as well as the performance of specific creative, not just what is the response rate that it drives and are we driving traffic to our site, but actually on a per network and a per creative basis, what is the conversion rate and what is the cost of driving a conversion? And that is incredibly powerful for us in beginning to optimize and make more effective our TV spend. We're using that as well to optimize our creative messaging and figure out which messages are working better than others and how can we learn from that in our creative development process. And even more importantly, we're also, because we're trying to be as real time as possible, we can learn on a daily basis how our TV advertising is performing, leveraging the Ispot data. So it's been really transformative and exciting for us, and we continue to push the boundaries and learn more and more. So what can you take away from this for your own business as you think about attribution? One, I would say just really be methodical and data-driven as you can in identifying hypotheses about how your TV is performing, or more broadly in your marketing mix, and come up with a specific question that you want to answer and dive into the data. And the Ispot team can actually be great consultants as well in figuring out some of those solutions. Tip number 2, just dig into as much data as you can, find the data in your own system, your first party data, but also, look externally. Marrying the Ispot data with our own has been incredibly informative to us in understanding behavior and confirming the value of television, and also helping us to understand what the right amount to spend on TV is. And finally, you always have to make sure that the data is really high quality, high integrity, well cleansed, so that you can make the right decisions off of your data. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. Really appreciate the opportunity to share with you.
Sarah, wow. Thanks so much for sharing your conversion story and explaining the methodology behind how you proved TV's cross-channel impact. We'd like to learn more. You said the survey-based method you started with didn't meet your standards or rigor. What's your advice for a head of marketing trying to set standards for an organization to become more data-driven?
Sure, it's a great question, and I think it's a constant quest for all of us, as marketing leaders to become more data-driven and continue to push the needle on that. I think the most important thing is really to build a business case for what the right data can deliver for you to help you run your business better. If you're interested in data just for the sake of it and don't explain how access to that data and the analysis that you are going to run on that data is going to improve business results and create business value, you're going to have a harder time making those arguments. And then, the other thing I would say on this front is that sometimes you've got to be iterative on this. You got to start small and then, build in terms of your data strategy. And hopefully our case example for TV of the multi-step process that we've taken is a great example. In other cases, you may be able to jump ahead, and do things not perfectly, but in a very advanced way from the start. But I think sometimes starting small and then building on those data-driven learnings can be a good way to build momentum and build consensus that adding additional resources and or purchasing additional data to help you be even more informed in the decisions that you're making is also a good strategy.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. On that point about starting small to really think big and drive other tests, we've actually got a few people, I'm looking at the chat, interested in learning about your take on additional tests. With that, do you plan to look at the impact of TV on any other channels, such as email or direct mail or out of home?
Yeah, so we're primarily a digital business, so I'm not sure out of home is something that we'll look at. We would have a tough time, I think. Out of home is a little bit like television in being a channel that doesn't have this great signal to give back to you about the downstream behavior that it's driving. But in terms of email, in terms of organic search behavior and some of our other channels, that is something that we're absolutely digging into and understanding the impact. I think as a starting point, we were most interested in understanding how how TV was impacting our other paid channels, because we really wanted to optimize those, but absolutely you can use this to look at your entire marketing mix.
Yeah, great examples. And we'd love to know, what tools are your team using to do the modeling? Since you talked so extensively about it, I think we're all very interested. And more importantly, are you doing it all in-house?
So we are doing it all in-house, which is perhaps unusual, but we have a very sophisticated digital marketing program, and in fact have a multi-touch attribution system that we have built in-house and that we use on a real-time basis to make decisions for us in terms of how we're spending and allocating and bidding all of our digital marketing programs. So we took our analysis of TV and integrated it into that system to really develop our results. I will say not everyone has this advantage, but we actually have a PhD statistician on our own staff who was incredibly helpful to us and ran this analysis. And I have to say, I don't actually know what software tools he used in developing the model, but we were definitely advantaged in being able to have that resource at our disposal.
Thanks, Sarah, for explaining that and for your time. And more importantly, all the methodology that we had learned. It was great having you.
Thank you
Back
so
to
much.
you, John.
All right. Thank you so much, Amelia, and huge thank you to Sarah. That was an amazing presentation, and definitely this is next level, everybody, right? Is being able to take granular TV and video data with digital and first-party data all together, and then being able to understand the impact of it all together. So really amazing. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit, and now we're going to hear the network's perspective in all of in media and innovations. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stu Schwartzoffel, who is the SVP of Media Partnerships here at Ispot, to introduce our network panel. So take it away, Stu.
Thank you, Sean. I'm Stuart Schwartzoffel, SVP Media Partnerships here at Ispot, and I'm so pleased to be here at TV Disrupt. I have two distinguished guests from our network partnerships that I'd like to introduce. First, from Viacom CBS, we have Radha Subramaniam, who is the President and Chief Research and Analytics Officer at CBS. And Radha, we're so pleased to have you here today.
Likewise.
We also have, from Viacom CBS, Julian Zilberbrand, who is the EVP of Advanced Media. Thanks for joining us, Julian.
Thanks for having me, man.
So today we have a really interesting panel discussion for you guys. As you can see, both of our panelists are from Viacom CBS. Viacom CBS is an important client partner of ours, and they're doing a lot of innovative things in the marketplace. And we wanted to showcase some of those innovative things from two different perspectives. So Radha is very focused on the show promotion side and the advanced tune-in side. And we're working with Radha and her team to do a lot of interesting things in that space. And Julian is more on the ad sales and product development side and is doing a lot of interesting things on that side of the house. So two interesting perspectives that we're going to bring together under one roof. So Radha, I'd love to start with you. I think it's fair to say that the need for impactful show marketing is at an all-time high. This is being driven by a few things. First and foremost, there are a lot of original series available to consumers today, right? There's just a crazy abundance of them. We know that there's more shows than ever, but it doesn't mean that people's disposable time and attention is at an equal all-time high, right? So those things kind of run contrary to one another. We also know that there are myriad AVOD and SVOD platforms that are making distribution kind of more and more fragmented as different media organizations kind of take back their IP and bring that under their own streaming roof. So needless to say, the content choices are vast, attention spans are limited, and distribution is getting more fragmented by the day. With that being said, I think a lot of people are asking, are we living in the golden age of original programming, or is the collective industry throwing an unrealistic volume of content at viewers? And I'd love to have that be our first question for you, Radha.
Sure. So I will say that we are living in the golden age, but the platinum, diamond, and other eras are yet to come. So let me tell you why I believe that, right? On the one hand, yes, there's a ton of content. And people are watching immense amounts of content. But at the same time, look on your own social media or talk to your own friend circle. Everyone's always like, what are you watching? What are you watching? What do I need to watch next, right? There's a lot of enthusiasm and energy for more and more viewing. And the various platforms and technologies we have accessible to us have made time spent viewing really, really efficient. You can binge, you can watch live. There are many, many ways of consuming content, right? And I see even more of this over the next few years. So as is Stu, back in the day when you and I used to commute in New York City, you know the number of people who are watching video on the subway or on the Metro North or something like that. So that added to viewing time, but very quickly, right? A few years from now, and I don't want to predict exactly when, but soon enough, there will be a ton of autonomous cars and you have a whole other time and space where you can watch content. So if people are given the opportunity, they really will stop doing most other things and watch video, right? So I feel that on the one hand, we have a ton of content. I'm excited to work in this business. I'm excited to have all the choices, but I think the best is yet to come.
Fair point. But would you kind of agree, Radha, that putting all those things aside for a moment, that the role of a marketer at a network has never been more pivotal?
So I would say absolutely yes, but that we also have many more tools, including partnerships like yours, that make our job a little bit easier, right? So let me take a step back and tell you how we think about marketing and how we think about IP and how we think about product. So first of all, unlike a lot of the streaming only players, we don't have unlimited shelf space. So we're just announcing our fall schedule. We have 22 returning series and then another 6 that are thrown into the mix. So there are a very limited number of shows that we're promoting from scratch, for lack of a better term. But then from audience segmentation all the way to attribution, we have so many tools that help us optimize where the media should go, optimize which creative is working, optimize how long a campaign should run. So yeah, it's marketing has never been more critical, but we've also never had so many tools at our fingertips.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you, Radha. Julian, I'd love to move over to you. And before we get into your question, I'd love to just give some context to the folks listening at home today about what you do at Viacom CBS and kind of what the backdrop is. So, I think it's fair to say that boosting advertising reach across broadcast and cable, streaming and digital video was a big part of why Viacom and CBS merged in the first place, right? And technology plays a key role in advancing this endeavor, right? And you worked on something called InView, which is a reporting, insights, and analytics platform that allows Viacom and CBS customers to easily analyze performance across the Viacom CBS marketplace of inventory and advanced solutions. So I think this is a prime example of how technology is being used to enhance the client experience. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Viacom CBS and how you almost are operating like a tech startup within a very large media organization?
Yeah, sure, Stu. So I've been with Viacom CBS about 6 years now. Obviously, 2 years or 1.5 years in the merged company. Prior to that, I spent about a dozen years on the agency side. So Radha's answer was like hit home in terms of where we are from a technology perspective. My role has evolved over the course of time as I've been here. Right now, I'm really focused on developing new solutions for clients to better engage with Viacom CBS. As you mentioned, we work on a product that we will be releasing in the new broadcast season called InView, which is a reporting, insights, and analytics platform. And the goal of that platform is twofold. One, obviously, to provide our clients quicker, faster, and better access to information and data than they have before. Provide a centralized environment to have all your investments, kind of get a view of all your investments. And most importantly, to start creating a less transactional relationship and a more client service relationship. I think anybody can sell you something. How you then service that client, how you then develop relationships over time, how you provide solutions that meet their needs is what we're focused on with this specific product. I have a couple other things that I work on, customer identity, that Radha and I engage on, and a few other things. But when it comes to kind of how we want to look at client engagement, it's really about, obviously we have tremendous products to sell and all the stuff that Radha promotes. We obviously want to sell advertising around. And then at the same time, we really, really want to develop the relationship where we get feedback from our clients about the things that are important to them, the products that make sense for them, the capabilities that bring them value, the data that helps them make decisions with their investments. All of that is paramount to how anybody needs to engage with their client base. And as we grow as a merged organization, we recognize the importance of developing stronger, more comprehensive relationships across the board.
Very cool. Very cool. And you were the strategic and client lead on InView, is that right?
That's right. I have a partner who I work with on the product side, and together we're kind of putting this out into the market with support, obviously, of the sales organization.
And when you think about a product like InView, which I would imagine was not a simple thing to put together or to architect, how do you go about getting customer feedback in an efficient manner so that it's not an if you build it, they will come scenario? Because I'm pretty sure that's not how it works, right?
No, it's never how it works. Having been a client for the majority of my career, I kind of had a general idea of what clients need and what the marketplace needs. So that kind of made it easy on some level. But the reality is what we did is phenomenal. We asked. It wasn't that hard. We actually asked. What are the things you like? What are the things you want? What are the things that make sense for you? Engaging with clients and getting the feedback fundamentally takes a simple process, is really having conversations, right? And talking to them. Having a basic understanding of their day-to-day life is a great place to start. And certainly I'm able to bring that level of perspective. But the medium evolves, the job evolves, and I haven't been at an agency for 6 years. So I can't pretend to know what the challenges they face today are. And so we went and we had conversations. We had conversations with dozens of clients. We asked them, what are the things you would want? What are the things you don't like? What are the things being done in the marketplace that present value to you? We looked at some, I wouldn't call them competitors per se, because I think we all kind of, there's room for everybody, but we looked at what some other players were doing in the market, and we realized some of those products were really built in a box. They were done for the distinct purpose to serve the goal of that company. And that to me is not how you build product. You build product that you're going to take out to the market by getting feedback from your clients, from understanding what their needs are, and from trying to actually solve their problems. If you're trying to build a product and you don't try to solve your client's problems, what are you doing? You're doing something for yourself. And every situation I've been on, and I've had just an immeasurable number of meetings where people presented me a product where at the end of the meeting, I asked, and what good is this for me? Right? Like at the end of the day, what does this do for me? And most of the time people had no idea what to say back because they just assumed I would be like, great, thank you. And I encourage people and, in fact, frankly, just you've inspired me. I should go have a conversation with Radha about what we're doing, so I actually will be reaching out to you. But honestly, it's just having the conversations and engaging with clients. It's not that hard.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Radha, I'd love to move over to you, on a similar point, when we think about building things for audiences that they actually want, obviously it's no secret that Paramount Plus is a big point of focus right now for everybody at the company. When we think about relative to linear networks like CBS, MTV, comedy, how does Viacom CBS think about the role of Paramount Plus, and how should current and prospective viewers think about it?
Right. So it's an interesting time in the ecosystem because, as you said a while earlier, so there are a lot of offerings and there's a degree of marketplace confusion, but Viacom CBS has a very clear point of view on this, right? We believe there's room for ad-supported television, and smart people like Julian are spending a lot of time and energy working on that. There's room for AVOD and there's room for SVOD. Right? They're not at the cost of each other. And at CBS, we have very simple language around this. We have live, on demand, and streaming. So I would start to segment this in a couple different ways, right? One, I would do a content segmentation. Some content is best consumed live or in a near-time environment. I mean, the obvious examples are news and sports, for example, right? But there are also some shows that you're literally waiting for every Sunday night. For me, it's both Mayor of Easttown, which is not one of mine, and Equalizer, which is one of mine, right? So there are things, and if you even look at Falcon the Winter Soldier, there was so much anticipation that was built by having it drop once a week. On the other hand, there are other shows that are completely bingeable. And so we look at our portfolio and we figure out what the best life for each show is. You may have a show like Evil or Clarice that started on broadcast, but ultimately we figure out that their best, longest, most robust life is on our streaming platform. So we're looking at everything at a very specific level and looking at the intersection of audience and content to figure out where a show goes and for how long.
Interesting. Yeah, it is such an interesting time in terms of the role that different streaming platforms are playing within the larger organization. Some are more mature, some are less mature. Julian, I'm curious on what your perspective is on this.
Well, Radha's super on point. Like last I checked, the population isn't decreasing. And there are economic realities across the population in terms of what people can and can't do. And not everybody can have 20 streaming services, right? And so there's room to play for all of these potential functions, right? When you look at things like Pluto TV, and you look at Paramount Plus and the networks and the linear channels, like there's a place for all of it in the ecosystem. So as a consumer, and I'll come to this just as a consumer, there's room for all of it. And the question is, and I think Radha makes the really great point: what's the content, and what makes sense and what am I trying to do. I'm a big Marvel fan. I was certainly waiting for Falcon and the Winter Soldier to come out, and I like WandaVision and all this other stuff. But, I like Star Trek, right? And I enjoy some of the stuff that, coming out in there. And occasionally you want to binge some of that, when you have the opportunity to. So I think that there's different strokes for different folks, if I could use like a classic line. And I think that there's room for all of it. And like I said, the idea that there's one way to approach this is incredibly arrogant, right? Like that's just like not the reality of it. Different people need different things. The timing's different. Radha mentioned earlier, if I'm commuting to the city, chances are I'm not watching a linear stream. If I'm at home, maybe I am. Right. There's still an important place for news and sports and all these other things that don't speak to streaming or on demand in the traditional manner. That's why we've done what we've done and created, something that's the best of both worlds. So I think there's really room for everything. And it depends on where you are on your day-to-day basis and where you are as a consumer in terms of, the content you're looking to consume.
Super interesting. And, we've heard during different upfronts and new fronts, as large media companies like Viacom CBS, like NBC Universal, the just announced merger of, Discovery and Warner Media that will potentially take hold next year. We're hearing more and more about how in a matter of years, they will see 50-50 viewership between linear and digital, meaning the source of eyeballs will approach 50-50 in the next, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years. For some of these larger media companies. Obviously, digital is already a major contributor in the neighborhood of 20 to 30% for most of these large media companies. So as this kind of shift happens, how do we envision linear and digital playing off one another to drive consumption and show awareness and intent to view in parallel path? Rod, I'm curious if you don't mind kicking us off there.
Sure. So I think we just have to be incredibly strategic. Right. And I'm not going to worry if the number is 20% or 40% because it's all meaningful to us. So I think, again, you have to look on a show by show basis. Some shows belong and should live forever in broadcast. We're in the 16th season of NCIS, for example. We're multiple seasons into FBI and so on. And those franchises keep going. As we most recently announced, we're bringing CSI back. Right. There's a lot of room for that. But then you have other shows that we've announced that we start on broadcast and then move to streaming, and some, like Star Trek, right, are streaming first. So I worry less about what percentage comes from where, because it's all different kinds of content consumed in different ways. And the world is not just linear and streaming, right? So we have a ton of news products, for example, that are OTT. Is that linear or is that streaming? Or is that in the world of neither? Because we're creating these artificial boundaries that consumers don't have. So I think it's about being flexible, nimble, and creative, and figuring out which of your content lives best where for how long, and being strategic about moving it between platforms.
Yeah, I like that. It's like build the playbook for each show rather than building a playbook that's one size fits all.
Exactly.
The divide is kind of artificial to begin, right? Like you're trying to reach eyeballs. I don't care where and how. We have great programming and you want to find them where they're consuming it. It's somewhat irrelevant. The divide is kind of like just an artificial kind of, line that people want to make.
Yeah, for sure. And, speaking of kind of timely things that are happening, Julian, I'm curious, what is your take, kind of your unique take from the technological lens that you look through of upfronts this year? How is technology enabling new ways to kind of buy and plan and target different audiences at upfronts this year?
Look, I think we're moving into a world where addressability, right, is a lever that everybody wants to pull. It may not fit every buy. Frankly, it doesn't and shouldn't fit every possible buy, but it does make a huge difference. And your ability to understand, what's available from an addressable perspective, how you can leverage that targeting, how you optimize on that, how you leverage that with the rest of your marketing initiatives, like all these varying things are coming into play. And so technology is enabling, a better way to aggregate, how things are working, for example, in traditional linear. I'll just use the line language, but right, like there was a coalescing that's happening in traditional linear when it comes to, addressable. There's obviously, native addressable that exists in streaming and or digital, right? And so that ability to do some hyper targeting is incredibly important, and people's understanding and ability to leverage that has certainly increased. But what it does is present other options for marketers to understand how to connect with consumers, right? As a former marketer myself, I think it's important to recognize that these are all tactics, and technology creates new opportunities to leverage new tactics to have a conversation with your consumer. If you're marketing a program, it's about presenting information to them in a manner that registers with them and allows you to have a conversation with them. And what technology has enabled, both from a sales perspective and from a buy perspective, is the ability to have a more and diverse conversation with your clients on multiple levels.
Gotcha. Now, believe it or not, we are actually right up against time. That went incredibly fast. I really wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us today and offering us your unique perspectives. We thank you, and we're so appreciative of your partnership. And now I'd like to end this network panel and hand the mic back to our CEO and founder, Sean Mueller.
Thanks, Stu.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Stu, and thank you to Radha and to Julian for joining us. It was great to get a network's perspective on the upfront and hearing how Viacom CBS is approaching the upfronts. But it was also a good reminder the networks are marketers themselves, right? They are out there tweaking their creative and their media and promoting their programs, much like an advertiser would. All right, thank you so much again, Radha and Julian, for joining us. All right, so moving right along. So for our next session, we are going to focus on creative messaging, and you're going to learn a lot during the session. Peter Dable, Chief of Insights here at Ispot, has some amazing insights of what it actually takes to put together a truly empowering ad. So without further ado, Peter, please take it away.
Thanks, Sean. Peter Dable here, Chief of Insights for Ispot TV. I wanted to talk a little bit today about the empowering messages and the upward trend in message that deliver empowerment, purpose-driven messages in this time of uncertainty. One of the things that we've seen, over the last year in this craziness is a big spike in the middle of last year, right when the lockdown actually took place, where almost half of the ads had some kind of empowering message. And we'll talk a little bit about what I mean by empowering in a second. But we've also seen an uptick over time. So around 10 to 15% of ads a couple of years ago were delivering these purpose-driven, empowering messages. Now we're north of 20%, going to 25% of all ads that have this message. So there's still 75% that don't, but we're seeing an uptick in these ads. And it's important to measure these because not all ads that are trying to be empowering are successful at it. Some come across as being pandering or tokenistic or opportunistic. But the ones that do really are delivering value for the actual brand. So let's talk about how we get these emotional metrics and what we mean by empowerment. So first of all, our ACE metrics technology is survey-based. We're a syndicated service that tests every national breaking ad in the US as close to first exposure as possible with at least 500 viewers, geodemographically balanced to the US Census. We've been doing this since 2010, have well over 100,000 pieces of creative fully scored. And one of the questions that we've been asking since we started the company was an open-ended verbatim that just asked viewers to say what they thought the advertiser wanted them to take away from the ad. So we weren't asking how they felt about anything or what specific thing they noticed about an ad, no leading questions, just let the consumer talk in their own voice. And we'd go from one-word answers such as cool, awesome, or horrible to books. People write a lot of commentary that the ad really hit them in a certain way and they wanted to write a lot about it. We then took those verbatims and essentially matched what was in the verbatim to every word and phrase in the English language. And they were able to cluster those in vector space that actually had these specific clusters that had common emotional signal. We came up and labeled those and found 57 unique clusters or 57 unique emotions. And we essentially built off those to create our cultural perception metrics of empowerment and exploit. So some of the words that would be common in our empower metric are empowering, obviously, inspirational, good role model, great message, made me want to do something. I love what they stand for. Those kind of words and phrases would be part of the empower score. But you can't just measure the positive. You have to measure the negative too, because there's often blind spots in these ads. And while people try to make an ad that's empowering, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So we measure the exploit signal too. And especially in the times of COVID, where brands were just going out there saying, you know, we're all in this together, people were sick of those. They found them opportunistic, pandering, disingenuous. And those are clearly not what you're intending when you're trying to build an empowering message. So to be able to test and split those out is actually very important when you're trying to deliver this purpose-driven message to reflect on your brand. So why do they do it if there's so much risk? Well, it's because simply today's consumers are demanding it. 90% of global consumers believe a brand's responsibility is to improve the state of the world, not just to sit there and sell product. 91% of millennials will switch brands based on social issues. 50% of consumers believe brands should get involved in social issues with no direct impact on their bottom line. So consumers are demanding this. But even so, brands that have adopted this purpose-driven approach over the last couple of years have grown twice as fast as brands that don't. So there is a self-serving interest in this, as well as a philanthropic interest in delivering a compelling message to society. But can you do it right? How do you do it right? How do you get the nuance without coming across as pandering, preachy, or just plain opportunistic and jumping on the bandwagon? Here's an example of a very, very successful empowerment ad by Frito-Lay. So this was in the time when there was a lot of ads on TV about, hey, we're all in this together in these uncertain times. I mean, just pick the phrases. They were used over and over again. Frito-Lay took a different approach. They were all about walking the walk, providing with numbers, 20 million nutritious meals for at-risk students and families, $50 million in direct relief effort aid, 3,000 new jobs being created. And you can see some of the verbatim comments on this slide. This really resonated with people. This is all about authenticity. It's all about walking the walk. And they didn't talk about, we're all in this together once. One of the highest scoring ads that we had in 2020, great brand recognition. And people really felt that there was something that the brand was doing to impact the current situation. But empowerment just doesn't stop with the pandemic. In fact, many brands deliberately steered away from pandemic messaging. Here's a couple of really good examples. In fact, 71% were not COVID specific. They were high in empowerment. Dick's Sporting Goods did a great ad about funding after school programs and different types of sporting activities in underserved communities. T-Mobile launched Project 10 Million, which is a brilliant effort to get Wi-Fi services, get people online in underserved communities, particularly who were forced to do so and had no way of getting it in the past. Tide continued its messaging of kind of mobile laundry services in any kind of disaster areas. And those always have a very positive impact on somebody's not just, sending laundry detergent to somebody whose washing machine is not working, but actually doing the actual service, pickup, delivery, making people feel like, they're getting through the difficult time. Okay, so I'm going to change gears a little bit. We talked a little bit about these, empowering ads, but right along the heels of that is taking a social stance, and they can be empowering as well. And here are some great examples on topics of diversity and inclusion, which is also not only empowering, but taking a social stance. So there's a great example of a BLM ad that was done by the NFL, gender equality and female empowerment, ads by Citi, among others, LGBT ads by Pantene, excuse me, and other P&G brands. We're also seeing ads that feature disabled people, all these different types of inclusivity type of ads. The difficulty with measuring these, though, is they tend to ask leading questions. What did you think about, diversity in this ad? What did you think about the woman in the character of the woman in the ad? Was that a good role model? How do you feel about the LGBT community is portrayed in this particular ad? These become very leading questions, and they change the mind of the viewer when they weren't necessarily thinking that at all. So our philosophy on that is don't put words in their mouth. Let the consumer talk. The consumer or the viewer will tell you how they felt about these issues and how they interact without asking a leading question. Those simultaneous effects are prevalent, and we saw some verbatims the other day of an ad that was very positive on diversity, but still very sexist. So obviously, as a brand, if you just asked, what did you think about diversity, you'd score very highly, but obviously not the overall message that you want. So I'm going to end here with a comment that I believe that these ads, these empowering messages, and brands taking a purposeful stance are going to continue to grow simply for the fact that the audience is demanding it. Here's a great recent example. If you haven't seen it yet, you will during the Tokyo Olympics. P&G has sponsored the Olympics for a long time, but this particular ad is all about sportsmanship and the camaraderie and the positive competitive nature of athletes within a sport, as well as just the humanity around the Olympics in general. Obviously, extremely powerful ad. Does have some social snippets in there on BLM and other equality kind of issues, but not so heavy-handed that some people would be turned off on that. So just an outstanding example of being able to be empowering and supporting particular causes, and just having people align with the brand values that were portrayed in that spot. Okay, so if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So we believe that it's incredibly important to measure these, particularly before they go on air. We live in very challenging times here, and these issues, social, political, environmental, you name it, all have a razor's edge with respect to being empowering or perhaps exploitive. And we also are dealing with temperamental and hypersensitive viewers. And so I think it's just great to be able to see the progress that's being made in attacking some of these issues, but also being able to link it back to great creative work. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Peter. That was absolutely amazing. And, this really underscores the importance of being authentic and relevant and timely with messaging in order to deliver this empowerment. And I love Project 10 Million as an example we talked about today, as that campaign was so on point in delivering that empowering message. As many of you know, Ispot acquired Ace Metrics late last year, and that has allowed us really to bring that true creative assessment together with the media side. And I have to say that just putting creative and media together this closely is so powerful, because if your creative can deliver on the message, if it can be targeted optimally, and the results are measurable, then that is the holy grail of marketing. So with that, this is a great time for us to wrap this year's TV Disrupt. So first and foremost, I want to thank all of our amazing speakers, amazing content today that I think you will agree was very powerful. I want to thank Peter DeLuca at T-Mobile. I want to thank Tori Pakis and Whitney Pouliot at Amica, Sarah Welch of CarGurus, Radha Subramaniam and Julianne Zilberbrand of Viacom CBS, and Peter Dayball of Ispot TV and Ace Metrics. So without further ado, huge thank you for joining us today at TV Disrupt. I really hope you enjoyed all of this content, amazing content that was put together. Hopefully lots of learnings, lots of takeaways. And in fact, if you have any questions or any thoughts, or you'd like to learn more about anything you heard today, please do not hesitate to email me directly at sean@ispot.tv. You can see the email up here on the screen. And once again, thank you so much for coming and enjoy the rest of your days.